how do we stop human trafficking?
Hello and welcome to the Mark and Pete Show. Well, a lorry driver has been charged with the manslaughter of 39 people found dead inside a refrigerated trailer. This is a chap called Maurice Robinson, 25, who was arrested after the bodies of 31 men and 8 women were found in Grays, in the United Kingdom, on Wednesday this recent week. He is further charged with people trafficking, immigration and money laundering offences, according to the Essex Police. One thing that it does bring to mind is how is it that a society, and I mean globally, has got to this position? Clearly, weak and vulnerable people are being exploited for monetary gain. Yep. Have we lost our moral compass? Now, here's a thought. Life's journey carries a heavy load that faith can help to mend, but fate becomes a twisted road which leads to a tragic end. Clergyman Pete, I know that we've talked about many subjects over the years, and this is one business that I would really be glad to see close. How do we solve the problem of human trafficking?
Well, business for Mark, I think it's a very serious subject. I mean, many of the subjects we cover are very serious, but maybe most are not quite as tragic as this particular incident that's just happened that you reported on, but also the whole, industry that produces such tragic events is one, as you say, a business that it would be nice to see the end of. Now, your poem that you just read out, some listeners might not be aware that the poems that you read out each week, you've created fresh for each subject, and this is an interesting point you make. Now, I don't know exactly what you meant when writing it, but you referred to faith and the road that it leads us on. And it seems to me that, yes, this particular lorry went on a circuitous route coming from China. It went via Ireland and ended up in Britain. But the real dangerous route that you may have been referred to is the route that our society, our culture has taken, moving away from the ethical and moral certainties of faith to end up in a very dangerous situation. Dangerous for these people caught up in an evil human trafficking business, but also a problem for our society as a whole to be in such a situation where such terrible things can happen, where there is a disregard for human life. You see, it's not killing people in the sense that you're stabbing them or something like that. It's a disregard for human life to allow them to be snuffed out. I mean, was that your meaning?
I believe that what's happened is that as a society, we seem to have lost our moral compass. And again, I'm not talking about just the fact that this incident has occurred in the United Kingdom. Many other incidents have happened throughout the world. This particular issue, incidentally, was originally concerned that some of the victims came from places of war-torn territories such as Syria or maybe other places in the world. But it ironically has turned out to be Asia. And of course, as has been highlighted, that it's believed that most of the victims come from China, although I do believe that some of them may have come from Vietnamese communities as well. But the point here is that how is it that individuals, and this is unfortunately, dare I say, a business, a rather corrupt and rather evil business, which exploits the weak and vulnerable. Clearly, I think from listening to many experts, humanitarians and people who study certain communities have said that often the United Kingdom and many other areas in Europe, incidentally, are often positioned as places where society is much easier, the streets are paved with gold. And so this illusion that's often created by those manipulative individuals can exploit certain communities who believe that actually their lives will be better. This is a real moral dilemma for many governments and society. How is it now that we actually stop this? Now, I would come back to a point, and this is a point of recommendation, and we can debate it. I think that, yes, clearly this recent incident in Essex has highlighted the lack of border control in the UK and many other areas in Europe. But what I do feel is this. Each country, and including the United Kingdom, pays a contribution to charitable affairs. It's a foreign affairs donation. Why is it that we now clearly are starting to see through a number of incidents that are happening in recent years where trafficking is happening or human smuggling is occurring? Let's put some of that funding into better education, into poorer communities where people understand where they may be vulnerable and where there are traps. And at the same time that we put in better border controls and policing and, crucially, better fines for those who are guilty of such crime. Now, I want to ask you, Clergyman Pete, about this, because it is about how do we stop the human trafficking.
Sure, yeah.
Do you think that that's something as a measure, accepting that I'm sure some people will say, well, money is put into it, but I just don't think enough is being done, because clearly, and this is the point, incidents like this are happening more and more, but how many other incidents go undetected?
Yes, I think you've outlined some ways in which this could be combated through policing, and it's not the point that we have to outline here all the ways in which it could be policed. The point is that there are measures that could be taken, and more money, manpower, thought could be put in. So I think it needs investing in. That doesn't mean just money. That means a bit more thought put into it, more planning, more strategic activity in getting behind the scenes, seeing who is doing this, where they end up. Now, there's a telling point in one of the reports. One observer who lived in the area and saw the trucks come and go to this particular estate, where the truck was discovered with the 39 dead bodies on board, said, well, trucks come and go like that, and I often see people running out of them.
Yeah.
So it's something that's been happening. Now, but the point that I'm going to make now is not that it's something that's been happening. I think we all assume that it's something that's an ongoing industry or business, but that people knew it was happening. Now, as soon as you get that, you say, well, in that case, it should have been possible to prevent it. And that's where your ideas of policing and greater accountability and greater punishments would come in, because it is a financial transaction. Just coming from a biblical standpoint, this is a quote from the Bible. A Bible in basic English, so putting across this particular verse, which is from Exodus chapter 21:16. It says, anyone who gets another into his power in order to get a price for him is to be put to death if you take him in the act. So if you find someone trafficking people, it refers exactly to this situation. It was to try and stop a kidnapping or taking people and transporting them illegally to another position, into slavery usually. Now, that is wrong, it says in the Bible, and the Bible has this as a whole theme of how people need to be set free, and the freedom to move is fine, but not if you're tricking them and therefore depriving them of their freedom. It has quite clearly happened in this place. The Bible says that people should be executed who do it. Whether or not we bring back the death penalty is not the point. The point is this: it's a severe punishment. It needs to be the severest that you offer, I would say. And the way forward is to do that, to deal at this end with the detection of the crime and following it through. But also, we could do something at the other end. Oh, by the other end, I mean where people are coming from.
Yeah.
They need to know what's expected in Britain, what you actually expect in Britain, which, okay, is a good place to live. I like living here. But there were issues of coming into the country. Now, the other thing that could be done is somehow we help people in the countries where we know they're coming this way. We help them to be where we are. If we're going to stay where they are, if we're going to if we are going to educate people about what it's like to come here and why it's inadvisable to take on such a risky route of transportation, we also need to do something to earn their respect in order to be able to educate them.
Yes.
Well, so I mean, I don't know what, from a business point of view, what do you think could be done?
Well, I do mention this point about how we can invest and put foreign aid into the right places. But there's something else I want to highlight here. I understand that there's a lot of listeners here who are obviously, sharing the horror of this particular incident. And I am going to mention something which is widely put into the media, and sadly, this was the case of one of the victims. It was one of the Vietnamese who was found in the truck, and it comes back to a rather poignant point, and the night before they finally arrived. And one of the particular people and family of Pham Thi Tra Mai, who's 26, who last messaged her family late in the evening. And it was a text message that was shared by her parents. And she said in the text, "I'm really, really sorry, Mum and Dad. My trip to a foreign land has failed. I am dying. I can't breathe. I love you very much, Mum and Dad. I am sorry, Mother." The point is that any parent will obviously be badly affected by that. And in my opinion, what should happen also is there should be better care and attention for those families, because it's also not just the fact that the victims need to be considered here through better education, hopefully so that this can actually no longer continue, but it's those families left behind. And I think many people, we in society sort of move on, and things happen, we get on with our daily lives. But to me, we can solve the symptom of the problem, but the real cause is what we need to get to. And I think that what's happening here is that it's those territories or regions where they are weak and vulnerable. They are, in some cases, exploited because they are given the promise of a better life. And I think that this is where I think if you can have better education, that should this happen, that people are better equipped to sort of think through the potential dangers. And I don't think that was happened. Clearly, what happened with the example that I've given here, this person genuinely thought that the idea of going to a foreign land has failed. Clearly that was the case, but had the prospect of thinking that coming to the United Kingdom was a good thing. Under the circumstances, it didn't work out. So what we need to do is that governments, I think the police forces, I think authorities, and communities, and this is the other thing, if you notice that there are safe havens where people are just being hidden away because of this sustainable issue, we should have also a whistleblower opportunity where you can actually inform where there is exploitation taking place. So I don't think there's enough infrastructure. And I know that we're going to mention something as well, which we have to here, because there's a big concern about Brexit, which is whether the UK stays in Europe, whether the UK comes out of Europe, one of the things that we don't want, and I'm sure that everyone would agree with this, no matter whether you are a Remainer or a Leaver, we don't want a situation where the United Kingdom and Europe is left vulnerable to people who can exploit gaps in our system. So what that means is, in my opinion, it's absolutely fundamental that the United Kingdom, that's the government, and also the EU, who are controlling the EU, make sure that they put greater investment to have better checks. That's my opinion. Yeah. And I don't think that is being considered. And how many more incidents like the Greys issue in the United Kingdom do we need to have before somebody actually does something about it?
Yes, I think the issue about borders is important, because when you talk about a border, we often think of the physical structure or physical boundary. But a border is something they're just something that you have to go across, and the border can be anywhere. For example, the border for the a Vietnamese person coming to Britain, say they got off that lorry and go in, the border would be the check when a customs officer comes to their home and asks what they're doing there, which wasn't going to happen. That's my point. They would just have melted away into Britain. And then it needs to be that the greater intelligence is sought and used. And as you were saying, Mark, earlier, investment needs to be put in. Instead of giving money away into overseas aid, let's use that money, or at least a proportion of it, to pay for that sort of operation where we trace people down and keep a track on what's going on. This looks like it's part of a big operation, maybe run partly by people in Ireland. But the border, if there's a border between Britain and Ireland, they cross several borders to get here. That's not the issue, the physical borders. It's the keeping track on who's coming into the country by having people embedded in the different communities, so that you know what's happening. Which takes thought. It doesn't just take money; it takes thought, planning, expertise, and it needs. So really, the move towards, making more of an effort there needs to start now.
Well, I think there's one other thing that I would say to conclude this particular subject, which is I do believe that there should be greater punishment or a deterrent for people who consider this. So in this particular incident that we've talked about in the United Kingdom, 3 others, a man and a woman from both about 38 from Warrington, Cheshire, and a 48-year-old man from Northern Ireland are also now remain in police custody on this particular incident. But the point being is this. Whether they are instigators in the whole operation, whether they are just part of the process, complicit in the whole, whether it's the driver or so on, I believe that there is not severe enough deterrent. Now, whether that's a lifetime prison sentence, and what I do mean life, and let's not get too technical, I mean never to leave prison ever again. This has to be one of the most abhorrent acts that anyone could actually commit, because it's not just a case of shipping people about; it's actually murder, and that's the thing. It's actually murder, and I know that some people will say, "Well, was it really intended that they would be victims and die at the end of their journey?" It doesn't matter. The fact of by going through this process, the likelihood is it could happen and probably will happen. Yeah. So my last point on this is that I believe that governments need to have a very, very strict policy that wherever you are, and there's no jurisdiction, no safe haven. So, for example, if the punishment in the United Kingdom is one level, it's something different elsewhere in mainland Europe. I think it should be the same. If you are guilty and proven guilty of human trafficking, that is it. You are put away.
I mean, what you're talking about is the difference between murder and manslaughter. Yes. But it's interesting to know that it can be that manslaughter carries the same punishment as murder. So
it could do.
So what it would take is having human trafficking to be deaths due to human trafficking are treated as the most severest form of manslaughter, so equal to murder. I think that could be done simply through sentencing guidelines.
Correct. Yes. Yes. Well, listeners, I know that this is a subject that requires a little bit more thought, and particularly with the incident in the United Kingdom, more details will come. But let us know your thoughts. What do you think should be done? What do you think are the potential solutions? Maybe there's other things that you've got in your mind that should be done by the authorities, both in the United Kingdom, throughout Europe, and in fact, other parts of the world. Why not log on to markandpete.com and let us know your thoughts? Well, thank you for joining this particular episode, and join us again next time for more in-depth conversations with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark.